everybody. Welcome on another episode on Shadow Space. For all of you, my new listeners who don't know who I am Laura Brown, your host of this podcast, and I am so excited to have you guys tune in. And for all of my returning listeners, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for tuning back in. It means the world to me, and I am so grateful to have you guys back here on another awesome episode on this podcast. So I know I promised you guys last week that I would do something a little bit more lighthearted this week for you all, but I hate to say it. I want to talk today about suffering. So here we are. And, I don't see suffering as something that is negative. So hopefully it's a bit more on the lighter side of things, but we might get a little deep and a little heavy. As you guys know, I like to go deep. So anyway, here we are. I wanted to really bring you guys an exciting topic that I have experienced in my personal life, and also when I talk to people, I hear about suffering quite a bit. So today's episode is about suffering. So the way I like to think about suffering is in two different ways. I feel like, in general in life, sometimes we're all faced with things that are not pleasant and that are sometimes out of our control. And some of those things can sometimes trigger a lot of hurt and pain within us that is, as I said, not in our control. So we end up suffering as a result of that. So there is that, idea of suffering that, can, present itself in our life. And then there's the other idea of self-inflicted suffering. And this is the one that I have explored quite a bit within myself as I was going through my healing journey. And sometimes, and for me, I should say, the difference between the two can be very distinct. The first one, in the context of things happening in our life that are out of our control, that may trigger a lot of hurt, pain, and to an extent even trauma, can lead to a lot of suffering, right? And some of that stuff is completely out of our control because, hey, that's just life. And sometimes we don't know why things happen the way they do. But I always believe that there's a greater purpose for the things that we go through, right? So I've learned that in suffering and in pain, we learn a lot more about ourselves. And eventually we come to an understanding that that was also a teacher for us in our life, right? So in this context, though, or the sense of self-inflicted suffering, I think that is more so in the idea that there's things that may be hindering us, things that we may be holding on to, things that may be a block for us, things that may be not allowing us to kind of grow, evolve, and move forward in the direction that we know we're meant to. And sometimes we hold on to things and we stay in places, or we stay in circumstances, or we stay with people that we know are not, serving our greater good for various reasons. There's a ton of reasons why we do what we do. And for me, when I explored this area of myself, I found out that a lot of that was, for me, based in fear and a lot of self-doubt, to a certain extent, even like self-worth issues. And this is why I say, sometimes that in the two examples here of general suffering is kind of what I call it, or suffering in silence, and the self-inflicted suffering, I think there's something that we can do in both areas to help us kind of move out of those stages in our life. In the case of self-inflicted suffering, if we bring awareness, right, to the things that we know are hindering us in some way, in some capacity, shape, or form, we can begin to work on those things slowly, gradually, and make progress in the direction that we envision going. However, the trick with that too, though, is sometimes self-inflicted suffering can be very unconscious, meaning we are not aware of it. We have no awareness, or it is masked in our subconscious, but it shows up in patterns and, different things in our life, right? We end up repeating cycles. We end up repeating the same patterns of hurt, pain, just the feelings of not being our whole self and being good within ourselves. So in my perspective, just in working in both areas, and by the way, this is something that I'm still working through, right? And that's, I think, worth mentioning, because I think sometimes we think about suffering as something that is a lifelong, endless, ceaseless sentence that we've been predestined to. And yes, I guess when we look at both types of suffering, we can say maybe in general suffering, there's things that have happened to us and we had no control over it. And maybe those things are still continuing and we have no control over it. However, we do have control over how we move forward, how we choose to move forward. But in the context of self-inflicted suffering, when we decide and we have awareness around the things that are causing us that perhaps the blockages or the hindrance in moving forward, there's certainly a lot we can do to empower ourselves into moving in a more aligned direction for ourselves, right? But with both scenarios, we have to have some level of awareness, and also we have to have some level of willingness to dive within ourselves and to be willing to do the work, right? To get us moving forward in the direction that we envision moving forward in. All that being said, it is not an easy thing to do, right? Especially if we don't bring awareness and have consciousness around our efforts and what we really want to do. So I'm saying this to say that self-inflicted suffering or suffering, both things can cause a lot of pain and a lot of frustration in our life, but there's certainly a lot we can do to help ourselves move out of those phases into a different direction and create a different dynamic in our life and in our world. So some of the things that I have been able to do for myself, for example, is to really work through the shadow. And this is why I emphasize the shadow so much, and where we can find a lot of, where we can find some, like the roots of some of the things that are holding us back, right? And so working through the shadow is an area where we can begin to kind of dive in and look at the things that are making us feel stuck in life. And so for me, this is where I've done a lot of work, and I should say I continue to do a lot of work for myself. And these are steps that I take every day, or I try to take every day, I should say. Every day is not perfect, as we all know it, but I do want to be able to get out of the things that I know I have that have been holding me back. And I think this is where we can empower ourselves to know that there is more to life than just feeling stuck and staying in the suffering phase, especially suffering in silence, because a lot of people are suffering in silence. And for some of those reasons why people suffer in silence, in my perspective and in my opinion, honestly, is that I don't feel like people feel like they can be heard. I don't feel like people feel like they can be understood. I don't feel like people can feel, safe enough to let their guard down and be vulnerable. Myself included in that. I'm going to be very real. I have struggled with this area of my life for quite some time. And there is a reason for that suffering for me. I've come to the understanding most recently as I was doing my shadow work that one of the reasons why I never felt safe enough to be able to be vulnerable with myself is because I have felt betrayed by the people that I trusted the most and by the people that I felt should have been the ones to protect me in my life. And that goes as far as family and close relationships. But I'm not going to get too deep into that. Not for today, anyway. Maybe another episode. But that's one of the reasons why I have never allowed myself to feel that safety around people, to be able to trust people enough to say, hey, here's the things that I have felt stuck with. Here's the things that I suffer in silence about by myself. Here are the things I cry about and behind the scenes on my own. Yes, I do portray this image that everything is okay and that I've got things under control. And I think we all do a very good job at that. But sometimes, if you find that safe space where you can open up to someone or to something, I say something because I find a lot of release and a lot of just peace in writing. So journaling, some people call that journaling. But I do find that is where I let myself express myself freely. And so whatever the outlet may be, I think there's certainly something that we can all use to help ourselves navigate through this suffering and hopefully come out on the other side, not only a better version of ourselves, but also a more aligned version and a version of ourselves where we feel that inner peace that we're all deserving of and that we are all yearning for. And so I think, there are so many things, so many tools out there that we can be used to help support us through our journey, right, towards healing. And obviously the shadow is, oh my God, I can't talk about the shadow enough. This is where you really get to understand yourself on a whole different level and gives you a whole different perspective about yourself. You become enlightened once you start to dive into the shadow. Now, that being said, let's keep things very real. I like to try to keep things real as much as possible. Diving into the shadow is not something that is easy for many people. And even myself, I don't think I ever got to a place in my life where I was like, okay, I'm ready today to dive into the shadow. That's not how it worked. I was led to this path through my healing journey because I was open to the process. I was willing to heal and be better for myself and feel better in my own self, And so I think I was led to this path of working through my shadow and bringing more awareness around the things that were holding me back. And, a lot of times we actually sometimes know what these things are. Other times we don't. Sometimes they're unconscious. Other times we kind of know they're there, but we don't really want to go there, And so I think the allowance and giving yourself the opportunity to even start small, if it's just you want to introspect maybe once a week, that's okay. And if you want to journal once a week, that's okay. If you just want to write 2 or 3 sentences, every other day, that's fine. I think the important thing is to remember that there is a way out of this suffering as long as you're willing to invest in yourself and do the work that is required to help you move through the phase and the cycle of getting out of that suffering. And it is a daily practice. What I should say, it's a consistent practice. Some people do it daily. Some people do it maybe weekly or, every 2 weeks or whatever the frequency that works for you. I think whatever it is that works for you is what you do, because we're all so different and we're all so unique and we all have such different, circumstances in life, and we have to honor that in our process of healing. So do what works best for you. Find the groove, find the rhythm, find the pattern that works best for you. But as long as you're willing to do that consistently for yourself, I think you will be amazed at what you gain out of this process and out of this just simple practice of just looking within yourself and looking at the root cause of the things that are holding you back, so that you don't have to stay in this negativity and frustration of feeling like you are stuck for life and you are doomed to suffer. Because none of us are doomed to suffer. None of us are. And I'm going to say that again. We are not here to suffer. We are here to thrive. We are here to experience life to its fullness and to the fullest of our potential, right? And so I think we have to, get to a place where we understand that life itself is available to us every day, and we're meant to experience all of it. That's why we're incarnated in this humanness that we are, and that's why we have this human experience. And so I think we just have to give ourselves the opportunity and the space to do this work so that we can transcend all of those limiting beliefs and really see ourselves thrive in a new way. So I'm saying this to say there's a lot of hope and possibility to really redesign your life the way that you see it fit and the way that you envision it, and to really thrive in your life. Okay? So with that being said, I do have a free resource on my website around working through the shadow. So if you guys want to check that out, if it's a tool that can help you guys get started to work on your shadow and dig within yourself, by all means, please check that out. My website again is shadowspacehealing.com. So you can go in there and just check out the free resources section, and you'll see, the resource that is designed to work through your shadow and really examine your world within. Okay. All right, guys. So with that being said, I just want to leave you guys here with this episode. Hopefully it was enlightening in some way. Hopefully it was helpful to you guys. And as always, I'm here to guide you guys through your journey, through your process of, self-discovery, your process of self-development. And I hope we can all empower each other on our journeys. And so I will be back next week with another episode for you guys. But until next time, as always, love and light, peace and blessings. And I will catch you guys on my next episode. But before all of that, I just want you guys to remember to go out there and sprinkle some of that shine and shimmy that shimmer and just spread the light everywhere that you go. And just remember, the light does exist within you as well. It starts with you. It always does. Okay? All right, guys. I will see you guys on my next episode. Have an awesome day. See you later. Bye.